drops his motorcycle in an empty parking lot. The bike isn't broken. He isn't injured, but his ride is over because he can't lift it. That's the problem with most so-called grandpa bikes. Everyone talks about reliability. Nobody talks about what happens when a 900-pound motorcycle ends up on its side. A real grandpa bike isn't just reliable. It has to be light enough to manage, simple enough to fix, and tough enough to outlive you. Most modern motorcycles fail at least one of those tests. These 13 don't. And by the end of this list, you'll understand why some of these old machines may still be running long after today's high-tech bikes are sitting in scrapyards. We start with the bike that every other list puts at number 1, and that belongs on a different list entirely. Number 13, Honda Goldwing, and why it fails the grandpa test. Let us deal with the elephant in the room immediately. The Honda Goldwing is the most reliable motorcycle ever built. That is not in dispute. There are documented Goldwings past 500,000 miles. One owner has covered over 700,000 miles across 2 of them on original engines. If the only test were reliability, the Goldwing would top this list and every list. But reliability is test 1 of 3, and the Goldwing fails the other 2 badly. A current Goldwing weighs around 800 pounds. The older full-dress versions push past 900. That weight is manageable at speed. These bikes feel lighter than they are once moving. The problem is everything that happens below 10 miles per hour. The car park, the petrol station forecourt, the sloped driveway. The moment your foot finds gravel instead of tarmac at a junction. At those moments, 900 pounds is 900 pounds, and physics does not care how good your maintenance records are. A commenter on a competing video said it perfectly. He wrote that he wanted to see a grandpa pick up a Goldwing after he drops it. He was joking, but every honest older rider felt the truth in it. Another rider, 73 years old, explained that the vast majority of large touring and adventure bikes are wrong for older riders for exactly 2 reasons. The seat is too tall to flatfoot, and the bike is too heavy to lift when it goes down. And bikes go down, not at speed, in car parks, at walking pace, when a foot slips or a knee gives or the camber of the ground is half an inch lower than expected. The Goldwing also fails test 3. It is a magnificent piece of engineering, but it is not a machine most owners maintain themselves. The complexity that makes it smooth makes it dealer-dependent. Test 3 asks whether you can keep the bike running with your own hands and your own tools indefinitely without a service department. The Goldwing's answer is no. So the most reliable motorcycle ever built is not a grandpa bike. It is a young man's idea of a grandpa bike. The real ones are lighter, simpler, and built so that you can still ride them the year you turn 80. Let us meet them. If the Goldwing is too much bike, the next machine is exactly enough. Light, low, belt-driven, and built to start every morning for the rest of your life. Number 12. Yamaha V-Star 650, 1998 to 2017. The Yamaha V-Star 650 is one of the most quietly correct motorcycles ever made for a rider who intends to keep riding past 65. Start with the facts, because a competing video got these wrong, and its own audience tore it apart. The V-Star 650 uses an air-cooled 649cc V-twin. The custom model runs belt final drive, not shaft, belt, which means no chain to lubricate and adjust, and none of the shaft drive maintenance either. The seat height is approximately 27 inches, low enough for almost any rider to plant both feet flat at a stop. Wet weight is around 485 pounds, light enough to manage in a car park, light enough, crucially, to pick up if it goes over. On test 1, longevity, the V-Star earns its place easily. The engine traces its lineage to the Yamaha Virago, a design that built its reputation on refusing to die through the 1980s. Owners routinely report 50,000 to 80,000 miles on nothing but oil changes, belts, and tires. The charging system does not suffer the regulator failures that plague some air-cooled V-twins. The starter does not quit. The whole machine is built to a standard of mechanical conservatism that means there is very little present that can break. On test 3, independence, the V-Star is a home mechanic's friend. Air cooling means no radiator, no water pump, no coolant. Belt drive means no chain maintenance. The carbureted early models can be tuned by anyone with basic skills. Parts are everywhere, and cheap because Yamaha sold these by the 100,000. It will not win a traffic light drag race. It was never meant to. It will start every morning for 20 years, sit low enough that you never fear a stop, and stay light enough that a drop is an inconvenience rather than a crisis. That is what a grandpa bike is. The V-Star is light. Bike 11 is lighter still, and it was designed from the ground up for exactly the rider who is tired of fighting heavy machines. Number 11. Honda Rebel 500. Honda did something with the Rebel 500 that almost no manufacturer does deliberately. They built a motorcycle around the needs of the rider who is not a 25-year-old with full strength and reflexes. They will not market it that way, but that is what they built. The seat height is 27.2 inches. That number matters more than horsepower to an older rider. It means you flat-foot the bike at every stop with bent knees in complete control. The wet weight is approximately 408 pounds. That is light enough that picking it up after a drop is a genuine possibility for most riders rather than a fantasy. Light enough that low-speed maneuvering never becomes the white-knuckle ordeal that a 600-pound machine creates. The engine is the same 471cc parallel twin Honda uses across the CB500 range, a motor that a competing video correctly praised before burying it under heavier bikes. It is understressed and over-engineered for its output. It makes around 45 horsepower, runs to 70 miles per gallon, and has documented examples past 90,000 miles on routine maintenance. Honda's overall reliability sits at the top of the industry. Valve checks come at 16,000 mile intervals. Oil changes at 8,000. The engine tolerates the kind of neglect that destroys lesser machines. On all three tests, the Rebel scores. It will outlast you. The engine is a known 90,000 mile plus unit. You can handle it, 408 pounds and a 27-inch seat. You can keep it running. Fuel injection that rarely faults, valve intervals so long most owners barely touch them, and parts at every Honda dealer on earth. The only thing the Rebel asks you to give up is bragging rights at the bar. In exchange, it gives you the ability to ride confidently and safely into your 80s. That is a trade every honest grandpa makes gladly. The Rebel is modern simplicity. Bike 10 is old simplicity. A machine so basic that there is almost nothing on it capable of failing. Number 10. Suzuki TU 250X, 1997 to 2016. If you want to understand what simple actually means, look at the Suzuki TU 250X. It is one of the lightest real motorcycles you can buy. Approximately 326 pounds wet. Not a scooter, not a learner toy. A proper, full-sized, classically styled motorcycle that happens to weigh less than half of what a touring bike weighs. The engine is a 249cc air-cooled single. That sentence contains almost the entire maintenance manual. Air-cooled means no radiator, no coolant, no water pump. 3 entire categories of failure that simply do not exist on this machine. Single cylinder means 1 piston, 1 set of valves, the absolute minimum of moving parts. Later models added fuel injection that proved completely reliable. There is genuinely almost nothing on this motorcycle capable of leaving you stranded. On test 2, manageability. The TU 250X is in a class of its own. At 326 pounds, it is not merely possible to pick up after a drop, it is easy. A rider in their 70s can manage this machine in any situation a motorcycle can find itself in. It is the answer to every comment from an older rider who said the modern bikes are too heavy. This one is not too heavy. This one could never be too heavy. The trade-off is power. A 250cc single is not a motorway weapon. It will cruise comfortably at 55 to 60 miles per hour and feel busy above that. For city riding, back roads, and the kind of relaxed touring that an older rider actually does, it is entirely sufficient. For crossing continents at speed, it is not the tool. But this list is not about crossing continents at speed. It is about machines you can ride for the rest of your life. And the TU 250X will outlive most of the riders who buy it. The TU 250 is the lightest. Bike 9 brings back the character and the sound that some riders cannot live without bringing back the weight or the unreliability. Number 9. Kawasaki W800 2011. There is a difference between a motorcycle that looks old and a motorcycle that is built the old way. The Kawasaki W800 is the second kind, and it is rare. Most modern retro motorcycles are new machines wearing vintage clothes, a modern engine and modern electronics hidden behind a round headlight and a chrome tank. The W800 is different in one mechanically significant way. Its air-cooled 773cc vertical twin uses a bevel gear-driven overhead camshaft, the same elegant, expensive, durable method used on the most respected British and Japanese classics of the 1960s. Kawasaki could have used a cheaper chain. They chose the method that lasts. That single decision tells you what this motorcycle is. The W800 weighs approximately 490 pounds, not feather light, but well-balanced, with a low center of gravity and a seat height around 30 inches that suits most riders. It is manageable in the way that matters. The weight sits low, the bike does not feel top-heavy, and it moves around a car park without intimidating its rider. On longevity, the air-cooled twin is built to the conservative standard that defines machines that last. No liquid cooling to fail. Fuel injection that has proven reliable across the model's long run. An engine that is barely stressed by its modest power output and will run for decades on routine care. On independence, the air cooling and mechanical simplicity mean a competent owner can do most of the maintenance themselves. The W800 is for the rider who wants the sound and feel and character of a 1960s classic but does not want to spend weekends rebuilding carburetors and chasing oil leaks. It delivers the soul of an old bike with the reliability of a modern one. And it will still be running and still be manageable long after the heavy modern machines have been retired. The W800 gives you classic character with modern reliability. Bike 8 goes one step further into history and proves that a motorcycle can be repaired anywhere on Earth by anyone forever. Number 8. Royal Enfield Classic 350, 2008. Here is a motorcycle that an enormous portion of the planet already trusts with its daily life, and that most Western riders have never seriously considered. The Royal Enfield Classic 350. The current Classic 350 uses an air-cooled 349cc single, the J-Series engine that Royal Enfield engineered to modern reliability standards while keeping the mechanical simplicity that defines the brand. It produces modest power, around 20 horsepower, and is deliberately tuned for low-end torque and relaxed cruising rather than outright speed. This is not a limitation for the rider this video is about. It is the point. On manageability, the Classic 350 sits low and balanced. The seat height is accessible, the weight around 430 pounds is carried low, and the bike is forgiving at the walking pace speeds where heavier machines become dangerous. On independence, it may be the most repairable motorcycle on this entire list. Royal Enfield is the oldest motorcycle brand in continuous production in the world, and the Classic platform is supported by a parts and service network that stretches across Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and increasingly the West. This is where genuine first-hand knowledge matters. In Pakistan, in India, across South Asia, single-cylinder motorcycles built on exactly this philosophy are repaired in roadside workshops by mechanics using hand tools, with parts that cost a few dollars in under an hour. There is no diagnostic computer. There is no dealer appointment. There is a man with a spanner and 40 years of experience, and there is your motorcycle, running again by lunchtime. The Classic 350 belongs to that world, a world where a motorcycle is not a luxury to be babied, but a tool that must always work and must always be fixable. A Western rider who buys a Classic 350 is buying into that philosophy of permanent repairability. The bike will outlast you because it is simple enough that nothing on it is beyond a competent mechanic anywhere on Earth. That is a kind of reliability that no amount of German engineering can match. The reliability of being fixable forever. If you have ridden in a part of the world where small, simple motorcycles are everyday transport, Asia, Africa, South America, tell us what you saw. What were people riding, and how long were those bikes lasting? Some of the most experienced riders watching this channel have seen things that would change how Western riders think about reliability. Drop it below. The Enfield can be fixed anywhere. Bike 7 needs fixing almost nowhere, because the Italians, for once, built something to last as long as the romance. Number 7. Moto Guzzi V7, 2008. Italian motorcycles have a reputation for breaking hearts and bank accounts. The Moto Guzzi V7 is the machine that proves the reputation does not have to be true. The V7 uses an air-cooled transverse V-twin. The cylinders stick out either side of the bike, a configuration Moto Guzzi has refined since the 1960s. It drives the rear wheel through a shaft, which means no chain to lubricate, adjust, or replace. Air cooling means no radiator or coolant. The engine is modestly powered, around 50 horsepower, and built to a standard of simplicity that the rest of the Italian industry abandoned decades ago. This is the engine architecture that powered Italian police fleets for generations, precisely because it refused to break down. On manageability, the V7 is excellent for an older rider. It weighs approximately 430 pounds, carries that weight low thanks to the transverse engine layout, and has an accessible seat height around 31 inches. The bike feels planted and unintimidating at low speed. It is not a machine that fights you in a car park. On longevity and independence, the air-cooled shaft drive simplicity means there is very little routine maintenance and very little that can fail. Owners report high mileage on routine care. The shaft drive can go the life of the bike with only periodic oil changes. The lack of liquid cooling removes an entire category of failure. A competent owner can maintain most of the machine themselves. The V7 gives you something none of the Japanese bikes can: genuine Italian character, that distinctive transverse twin rocket idle, the sound and feel of a motorcycle with a soul, without the fragility that usually comes attached to Italian charm. It is proof that you do not have to choose between character and reliability. You can have both, in a package light enough and simple enough to ride for the rest of your life. If you want the deeper list of old bikes that cost almost nothing to keep on the road for decades, we built a full video on exactly that. The Guzzi proves Italian can last. Bike 6 is the machine that has quietly outlasted everything for 40 years while nobody paid attention. Number 6. Honda Shadow 750, 1983. Some motorcycles are revolutionary. The Honda Shadow 750 is the opposite, and that is precisely why it belongs here. It represents over 40 years of patient refinement of a single idea: a reliable, accessible, mid-sized V-twin cruiser that asks nothing of its owner but routine maintenance. The Shadow's seat height is among the lowest of any full-size motorcycle, around 25 to 26 inches on many models. For a shorter or older rider, this is transformative. You are not tiptoeing at stops. You are flat-footed, knees bent, in complete control. The bike weighs around 500 pounds, but carries it so low that it feels lighter, and the low center of gravity makes it forgiving at the slow speeds where heavier bikes punish their riders. On longevity, the Shadow's record is extraordinary in its boring consistency. Owners regularly report over 100,000 miles. One documented Shadow Ace reached 123,000 miles, needing only the well-known 3 yellow wire connector fix and regular oil changes. The forums are full of 90,000-mile Shadows still running original clutches. The engine does not burn oil. The transmission does not need adjustment. Even the shaft drive on the relevant models goes untouched for the life of the bike. On independence, the Shadow may be the most supported motorcycle on this list. Every Honda dealer stocks the consumables. Aftermarket companies make everything. The used market is flooded with them, not because they break, but because riders upgrade and the bikes simply keep going. You can buy a clean Shadow for $3,000 and it will run another 15 years. One commenter described the Shadow perfectly when he called it the bike his grandfather wished he had bought instead of the Harley that nickel and dimed him to death. That is the Shadow's entire identity: boring, reliable, low, light enough, cheap to keep. It will bury every overpriced modern cruiser, and it will do it while costing a third of the price. The Shadow refined one idea for 40 years. Bike 5 took a different idea, lightweight and clever engineering, and made it last just as long. Number 5. Suzuki SV650, 1999. If a motorcycle could be described as the Mazda Miata of two wheels, it is the Suzuki SV650. Light, affordable, beautifully balanced, and apparently impossible to kill. The SV650 uses a 90-degree V-twin, making around 75 horsepower, in a package weighing roughly 437 pounds. The 90-degree configuration gives perfect primary balance, no balance shaft needed, no vibration to fatigue components over time. It is one of those engineering decisions that pays dividends across decades of ownership. Suzuki understood what they had and used this engine everywhere: the SV, the V-Strom, the Gladius, because it simply works. The proof is in the ownership records, and one is worth quoting directly. An owner of a 2009 Gladius, which uses the SV engine, bought it new and reported a single failure in its entire life: an alternator at 110,000 kilometers, replaced from a breaker's yard for $60. The bike has now covered 230,000 kilometers. It burns no oil. It returns the same fuel consumption as the day it was new. He attributes it to two things: regular oil changes and constant use without abuse. At 230,000 km, he reports it shows no sign at all of reaching the end of its life. That is test 1. Longevity, answered as completely as any motorcycle on this list. On test 2, the SV650 at 437 pounds is genuinely light and manageable, with a balanced chassis that makes it easy at low speed. On test 3, the SV is a home mechanic's dream. Its real genius is the parts bin. Brake pads cross-reference with the GSX-R. Fork seals match the Bandit. You can assemble an entire spare parts inventory from online auctions for almost nothing because Suzuki shared these components across a dozen models. Buy an SV650 for $3,000. Ride it to 100,000 miles. Sell it for $2,000. It will outlast bikes that cost triple, and you will be able to fix it yourself the entire way. The SV is light and clever. Bike 4 is the machine that took simplicity to its absolute logical extreme and got mythologized for it. With one famous error this script will correct. Number 4. Suzuki DR650, 1996. Let us correct the record before we praise this motorcycle, because a competing video got the basic facts wrong and its own audience never forgave it. The Suzuki DR650, in the form sold across most of the world including the United States, is not fuel injected, it is carbureted. It does not have a kickstart, it is electric start only. A competing video claimed both the opposite facts, and the comment section filled with writers pointing out that the channel clearly did not know what it was talking about. 15 people flagged the fuel injection error alone. When you get the basic facts wrong about a beloved machine, you lose the trust of everyone who actually owns one. So here are the correct facts. Air-cooled single-cylinder, carbureted, electric start, approximately 366 pounds wet, and a design that Suzuki has changed almost nothing about since 1996. That mechanical stillness is the entire point. The DR650 has been the same fundamentally simple machine for nearly 30 years. No fuel injection to fail, no ride modes, no electronics of consequence, a carburetor you can clean with a screwdriver on the side of the road. An engine so understressed that it treats neglect as a minor inconvenience. The longevity record is genuinely remarkable. A rider named Irv Daly took his DR650 to 145,000 miles with no major engine work. He was 90 years old and the bike was still running. Forum members routinely report 70,000 to 80,000 miles. The DR has two known weak points. Third gear can fail at very high mileage, and the subframe can crack under heavy loads. And both are solved permanently, with aftermarket parts costing a few $100s. Fix those two things once, and the bike is genuinely unkillable. On manageability, 366 pounds is light enough that the DR650 can be picked up and handled by almost any rider. On independence, a carbureted air-cooled single is the single most owner-maintainable engine configuration in motorcycling. There is nothing on this bike that a determined owner cannot fix in their own garage. It is, as one description put it, the Toyota Hilux of motorcycles, chosen by adventurers crossing continents for the same reason it should be chosen by a rider who wants one bike for the rest of their life. It does not break, and when it does, anyone can fix it. The DR650 is simplicity as philosophy. Bike 3 is the machine that started this entire idea, the bike that taught the world a small, simple motorcycle could outlive everything around it. Number 3. Honda CB 350, 1968 to 1976. Before the superbikes, before the adventure bikes, before any of the machines that fill modern dealerships, there was the Honda CB 350. And more than half a century later, it is still running, still affordable, and still teaching the same lesson it taught in 1968. That a simple, light, well-built motorcycle will outlast everything fancier than it. The CB 350 was one of the best-selling motorcycles of its era. Honda built them by the hundreds of thousands. The 325cc air-cooled parallel twin was smooth, reliable, and produced enough power to be genuinely useful without ever stressing itself. At approximately 350 to 370 pounds, it is light by any standard and trivially manageable for an older rider. The seat is low, the bike is narrow, it does everything a grandpa bike must do on test 2 without even trying. On longevity, These engines have now demonstrated something that no modern motorcycle can yet claim. They have survived for over 50 years. A CB350 that is running today has already proven it can last half a century. There is no theoretical projection involved. The evidence is the motorcycle itself, still starting, still running, 5 decades after it left the factory. On independence, the CB350 is supported by one of the largest and most knowledgeable vintage motorcycle communities in the world. Every problem these bikes can have was diagnosed and solved decades ago, and the solutions are freely available. Parts are reproduced by specialist suppliers. The carburetors, the points ignition, the entire machine can be understood and maintained by anyone willing to learn, with nothing more than hand tools and a workshop manual. A clean CB350 can be bought for a few $1,000s and will reward its owner with a riding experience that no modern motorcycle can replicate. Light, simple, honest, and connected to the road in a way that electronics have engineered out of every new machine. It will bury bikes that cost 10 times as much, and it has already proven it by outlasting 50 years of them. The CB350 proved the idea. Bike 2 took the same philosophy and built it into a machine you could buy new until almost yesterday, kickstart and all. Bike 2, Yamaha SR400 1978 to 2021. Here is a motorcycle that answers the oldest complaint in motorcycling. They do not make them like they used to, with a simple fact. Yamaha did, for 43 years. The SR400 and its larger sibling, the SR500, stayed in production, fundamentally unchanged, from 1978 until 2021. The SR is an air-cooled, single-cylinder motorcycle with a kickstart, not a kickstart backup. A kickstart as the primary and, for most of its life, only means of starting the engine. Learning to start an SR is a small ritual. Find top dead center, ease past compression, one firm committed kick. Owners describe it not as an inconvenience, but as a connection to the machine that electric start removed from motorcycling. It is the most analog motorcycling experience still available, and Yamaha kept selling it brand new into the 2020s. At approximately 384 pounds, the SR is light and superbly manageable. The seat is accessible, the bike is narrow and balanced. On test 2, it excels. On test 3, it may be the simplest modern production motorcycle ever made. Air-cooled, single-cylinder, mechanically uncomplicated to the point that almost any maintenance task is within reach of an ordinary owner. There is no liquid cooling, minimal electronics, and decades of accumulated knowledge supporting it. On longevity, the SR's 43-year production run is itself the proof. Yamaha does not keep a motorcycle in production, essentially unchanged, for 4 decades unless it works. The engine is descended from the XT500 that conquered the early Paris-Dakar rallies. It is understressed, simple, and built to outlast its owner. There are SR500S from 1978 still running today, and SR400S from 2021 that will be running in 2070. The SR is for the rider who wants the purest possible motorcycle. No screens, no modes, no electronics deciding anything. Just a single cylinder, a kickstart, and a machine that connects you to the entire history of motorcycling every time you bring it to life. It will outlast everything in any modern showroom, and it will do it with more character than all of them combined. If this is the kind of motorcycle content you have been searching for, honest, accurate, made by someone who actually knows these machines, rather than a computer reading a script, subscribe. We do this every week. And what is coming at number 1 is, in my view, the single most complete grandpa bike ever built. The SR is the purest. Number 1 is the most complete. A motorcycle that Honda built specifically to prove that the old way was always the right way. Number 1. Honda CB1100, 2010 to 2021. In 2010, Honda did something that no other manufacturer had the confidence to do. At a moment when the entire industry was racing toward liquid cooling, ride-by-wire throttles, traction control, riding modes, and ever-increasing electronic complexity, Honda built a brand new motorcycle that deliberately rejected almost all of it. The CB1100 is a modern motorcycle with an air-cooled inline-4 engine. Read that again, because it is the whole point. In an era when air cooling had been declared obsolete, Honda's own engineers argued to build a new air-cooled 4, a tribute to the legendary CB750 that changed motorcycling in 1969. constructed to modern reliability and emissions standards, but designed around the philosophy that made the original great: simplicity, durability, mechanical honesty. The engineers reportedly had to fight for this motorcycle internally. They were right, and they won. The result is a machine that passes all 3 Grandpa tests at the highest level. On longevity, it pairs the inherent durability of air-cooled simplicity with Honda's top-of-industry reliability and modern manufacturing precision. This is an engine designed to run for decades. On independence, the air cooling removes the radiator, water pump, and coolant failures that complicate modern bikes, and the deliberately conservative engineering means a competent owner can maintain it. On manageability, while it weighs around 540 pounds, that weight is carried low and balanced in the classic standard motorcycle layout, with a neutral riding position and a seat height that suits most riders, far more manageable in the real world than its weight figure suggests, and a world away from a top-heavy 900-pound tourer. But the CB1100's real significance is what it represents. Honda, the largest, most resourced, most technically capable motorcycle manufacturer on Earth, a company that could build anything, looked at the future. The entire industry was rushing toward and built a motorcycle that pointed the other way. They bet that riders did not want more complexity. They bet that the old engineering philosophy, air-cooled, simple, durable, honest, was not obsolete but eternal. They bet that a motorcycle built the old way would outlast everything built the new way. That bet is the entire thesis of this video, made into a machine you can buy. Every Grandpa bike on this list proves the same point in its own way. The CB1100 proves it most completely because Honda built it on purpose, in the modern era, with full knowledge of every alternative, and chose the old way deliberately. The bikes filling dealerships today will be electronic relics within 15 years, their proprietary systems unsupported, their sensors unobtainable, their owners trapped by dealer dependency. The CB1100 will still be running, air-cooled, simple, yours. It will bury every one of them. Not because it is faster or more advanced, but because it was built on the only philosophy that has ever produced a motorcycle capable of outlasting the person who bought it. That is what a Grandpa bike is. And the grandpas, the riders with 40 years and 40 bikes behind them, who have learned the hard way what actually lasts, knew it all along. 13 motorcycles, 3 tests, every one of them will outlast you. So tell me, how many miles are on your current bike, and how old are you? Drop both numbers in the comments. I want this comment section to be a wall of living proof. The rider with the most miles on a bike they can still pick up themselves gets pinned. Show the world what Grandpa bikes actually do.